everything, especially positioning, is so important. I don't know. I think a great example is if you watch two people fight, one person can avoid all damage without attacking or defending themselves just by standing, even open field. You can just stand behind the guy. And like, it's an experience that I think, like, if you really want to see like what makes ESO a great game, you can go fight someone who's never PvP'd before and they'll start spamming jabs on you. You don't even have to attack back. You just walk behind them.
Yeah.
And like that experience alone, it speaks volumes to like what you know about the game, right? Just that little positioning makes such a difference. And then you take that experience and you put it in a fight where you fight 10 guys and you sidestep that one step to avoid that damage from the jabs. So you stayed at that 10% HP threshold instead of 1%, so you don't die, right? Like it's all that, and it makes it such a deep game, you know? I almost feel like with ESO, there's no such thing as a definitive fight. There's no such thing as a fight where there's one side that has no chance of winning, and that's what makes it so good.
Well, then you go from,
maybe it's incredibly slim, but you know.
Well, you learn not just combat mechanics, but also as your time in game goes on, you learn an encyclopedia of sets that you've put together yourself for builds, and then other people have put together on their builds, and you start to recognize those sets in combat. And there's the one that blinds attackers, and you're like, you hit this guy, and all of a sudden you're missing all your swings on him. You're like, I know that set. I know what I just did. I'm gonna avoid that guy and target somebody else. And it's those little things that you just accumulate over time, and you don't even realize it. And that's, I love that. I love that about the game, that you can just, your brain becomes an encyclopedia, and the more that you've spent in time like gathering that knowledge and kind of no-lifing
it's not an MMO in the way it fights. It's a combat game. It's like a fighter. Like I think the best game I can put it akin to is like something like Smash, in the way that you actually operate and control your character. It's very much like Smash. It's all about timing and watching your opponent and predicting what they're going to do based on the move set that you know they do or don't have, or you suspect they have, and stuff like that. And it's, I don't know, it's nothing like WoW.
Well, and there's some other things that have kind of disappeared over time. So back in the day with dueling, you used to be able to watch for an opponent to go low on stamina. Right, that used to be the big thing. Is the veteran duelers could understand when
that's how you beat someone.
Exactly,
you drain their stam.
Nowadays, you don't really see that, and it's kind of like, maybe I
think there's two big reasons.
But even with Match Sork, they've got so many things to pull from that usually they stack a little bit of stam recovery, and so it's hard to really.
Yeah,
I don't know. You can't practice those same techniques, and I wish a lot of those were still around.
I think the two big reasons are that nowadays it's easier to have stam sustain in your build across any build. You just have more sustain with champion points, break free, all this stuff. It makes a difference. It really does, especially compared to early on. The reason why stam was such an important resource early on was because people just fucking played Magicka. No one played stam. So stam was your survival resource. So everyone viewed it as like, I need as much as I need, and that's it, right? You need as much sustain as you need, and that's it. And back then, man, sustain was shit. You know, you did heavy attacks to get sustain back. Like that was the game. And like, you know, if you had, what was it, like 100 stamina recovery was insane. Like that was a huge amount of stam recovery.
I think soft cap was 120 or 130.
Yeah, like that was, and at 100 recovery, you're not, you just, that's still like comparatively, that's 1,000 recovery today, which does not seem like enough, right? So the game was very different back then, and how you used your stuns and stuff was very different. And I think the reason we see that shift in running out of stam is because the game has shifted towards less of the kind of strategic style that combat was back then, and more about action reaction today to a degree.
Dueling used to be more like a dance, right? And it used to be a slow, methodical, almost tango between you and your opponent. And now it's quick, it's fast. You're going to either go down or you're not. And otherwise you're just going to sit there and tank.
People are better too. You know, the reason why the stam was the deciding factor was because, pardon my words, and no offense to anyone who played back in those days, but we all sucked, man.
Yeah.
You take any of the top players from a year ago and you have them fight at that skill level versus a top player today, and they will get mopped.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like absolutely mopped, man. And it's just, I don't know. I think that the increased skill level, the people are just better. They know how to play properly. Everyone's build has the right amount of sustain going into a duel so that if they get stunned on every 5 seconds, they won't run out of stam. And it's just because it's easier to build that way and people are better. And I actually like how it is today. I think the dueling's better now than it used to be perfectly honest. Yeah. I think that because I play burst builds, right? And burst builds do well in today's dueling environment.
Do they?
A lot better than they used to. That was a big struggle way back in the day.
Wow, so I couldn't attest to that. I don't really know.
Yeah.
So Burst is back, right?
Well, I mean, people tell you what they want. Oh, I play tank this, tank that. You want my honest opinion? People who always complain about tanks have never played a real damage build. Right. You have 7k weapon damage with Onslaught. Fuck that tank, buddy. Like, seriously, I don't know what to say. If you're struggling to kill a tank, you can put the tools on your build to kill them in nowadays patch, especially Scalebreaker with all the dots.
Yeah. Well, Bleeds used to be king, like, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago before it kind of had a hiatus. But and those were reigning for a long time. Put as many bleeds on your build as possible, and your opponent would go down no matter what in a few.
Unless they were a Templar.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
But then it was Templar, it was Stamplar bleed builds. That was
yeah.
So it was like they had.
I fought a lot of that. I never played the dual wield Stamplar bleed build myself. I played it in PvE because a build like that's about rotating on a stationary target, and that's why I played it in PvE. My builds I play, they're not about a stationary target. I never plan on a stationary target unless there's control in the build to make my target stationary.
Well, that's the thing is, so you see builds like that go out into open world, and then they die immediately.
Well, they're good at some things,
right?
Like if you fight them one-on-one, they're hard to kill, and they'll hurt if you don't
9 times out of 10
avoid them appropriately.
Yeah,
but at the same time, you're right. If they find themselves in a situation with 4, 5, 6 guys on them, they're slow. They can't chase anybody down if they're going to win the fight. So if the guy that he's trying to kill is fast, he gets away. And, there's advantages, disadvantages. I think a big reason why we see so many people play that style of build, which is more of a dueling build in open world, is because they just don't want to lose, especially egos. A 1v1. It's a lot about face, especially. Yeah. It's the whole thing with open world PvP because you have your name attached to your character. Yes. It's something that I've never actually been a huge fan of, but it's all about like that, clout, like, oh, I beat this guy in a fight, whatever. They just don't want to lose. So they don't play builds that get bursted. Essentially, they won't play a fast, speedy build because if they make a mistake, they get exposed for their mistake. And it's like, yeah, you fucked up. Try again. That's how I look at it.
Then they'll go and they'll make an exposed video and say that this guy sucks because I beat him on a dueling build in open world.
I know. I don't know. It's just a waste of, if you want to pad your internet ego, that's not the best way to do it, to be perfectly honest, because other people will be like, you look kind of dumb.
All right. So let's talk about Stamina archetype, because a nickname for you for a while was Father Stamina, right? You were one of the first people to do it. I don't think a lot of people do that. Man. You've kind of like paved the way for a lot of different things in ESO, and this is why I wanted you to be the first on the show, because you've had or kickstarted so many different things that have just blown up, and so Stamina was one of them. You had, I think, the first Stamina build that you came out with online, and maybe
I'm gonna make a clear definition here. ZeniMax made Stamina viable. I wanted to play it.
Let's give him some credit.
Without the changes that the game had made over time, it would never have been viable. So
thank
that
you,
was the big thing. Sorry. Thank you, ZeniMax. Yeah, no, it's true. The changes they made it viable. Without ZeniMax, it wouldn't have happened. Yeah, I guess, I don't know. So it was patch 1.3, I think, and it had just come out. And I was looking at the patch notes for like the Willow's Path set or something. It was Willow's Path back then. That was like, I'm like, Stamina is Willow's Path. I just know it. Like, that's how we're going to make it work.
It's 3 different recoveries.
And 3 different sustains. And I knew we needed the mag sustain because I needed to use something to defend myself other than dodge roll and stuff. Now, at this time, like, now keep in mind, no one played stamina way back then. The only person I'd ever seen play stamina was Xylina Laser Arrow, who I think, especially if you're going to talk to me about like the origin of stamina PvP, guys like girls, like Xylina, and guys like Krotha deserve huge shout outs for what they've done with stamina over the years as well. Benzie Boy as well. He played quite a bit of stamina too.
H-Arian. Yeah.
Aisha as well. Yeah, she played Stam DK with me. That was quite a bit later on. But early on, I think Xylina is a name that I have to bring up because at that time, Xylina played Stamina as well. I'm sure there were more, but those were the ones I was aware of.
I don't think she's a content creator. Is she?
No.
Okay.
Just PCNA. Just if you play on the PCNA server, you've probably fought her or fought with her.
Xylina Laser
I think she's almost got 5-star every character. She's a very, very like OG ESO player.
Yeah.
But anyway, so at the time, no one played Stamina, but I did see Xylina play it at that time. So just Xylina, I guess. And I've actually never talked to Xy ever in my life, but so I'd never contacted her or anything. Just like decided I wanted to try Stam at the time. And so I was just like, Willow's Path, yeah, that's definitely the way to go. Back then, there were no good sets. Literally, people ran Seducer Warlock. That was the build.
Right.
Because Warlock gave you mag back and Seducer gave you sustain. And sustain was like the biggest deal.
In some situations, Magnus. Some people did, right? So
sometimes Magnus. Yeah. Sometimes Magnus.
Okay.
Like vampires, you'd see run Magnus or something. Or if they wanted to front bar like a spell damage or more recover. I don't even know. But
weird min-maxing back.
Yeah, no, builds back then were fucked, but it was. I'll get into it. So Willow's Path was the obvious choice for me because sustain was the biggest issue back then, and that's what I thought. And I looked at the new patch notes. They had come out with some new sets or something, and I was so intrigued because it was like 2-piece stamina recovery. And I was like, oh, I can put a build together that has this much sustain. It'll work. So it was like the biggest fucking deal. I saw like weapon damage, stamina recovery, and my eyes started lighting up, and I'm like, there's a possibility here. So I tried it. And Willow's Path was the secret early on because you needed everything. You needed the mag sustain for Blazing Shield. It ended up being my Magicka dump, Blazing Shield and Purge. And then I needed the health recovery just to stay alive because I didn't have a heal because stamina builds didn't have stamina heals at the beginning of the game. And there were no HP-based heals. So Blazing Shield was literally my best defense. So health recovery, Blazing Shield was like, that was the option. And so my recoveries were decent. I had like 80 magic. I don't remember the build off the top of my head. 80 magicka, maybe the similar 100-ish health. And then the stam recovery is like 152. And I would tell people what my stam recovery was. And they're like, that's way over soft cap. You're wasting your stats. You know, when I brought the build out there and started playing it, people were so surprised. And I don't think it was necessarily because it was good, because it was okay, but I beat a lot of better builds with it because they never fought stamina.
Nobody knew how to play against it.
They never fought it,
and
not once. And when I hit the first time I'd hit someone with a Magnum Shot crit rush, they were flabbergasted. They're like, "What the fuck just happened?" They'd get knocked away, and then a huge chunk of their health would get taken out because, like, that was my option on the stand build. We didn't have defense. I had to have sustain and offense, and that was like literally all I could do, and just dodge attacks. And people didn't know how to deal with it. When a DK's talons were ineffective, they were at a loss.
Yeah.
You know?
The only stand builds you'd seen up until that point were permablock builds.
Yeah, and that was a mag build. Yeah. Right? They just had enough stam to permablock. Like,
it was the Twin Sisters builds when that was like, it was an
I think that was later on.
No,
I think that was around 1.5-ish.
No, it was bugged out early on. Yeah, 1.3 is it because that's what I ran starting off.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
Block Twin Sisters build, and it was very bugged. It would proc on multiple targets multiple times, and so you could get Nazurga like 20 people, and it would just bleed them all down. Like,
oh my god! See, that was a big thing about the game at the beginning too, is that it was not well balanced, and there were so many things like that. Like, one of the best examples was Blazing Shield Harness Magicka. Yeah. And this was something that I started doing in 1.2 with my mag builds, and it changed how powerful my Templar was. Because you'd go Blazing Shield or Harness Magicka first, and you put the Blazing Shield over top, but the Blazing Shield would restore Magicka like it was the harness, and you could just keep refreshing it over top of your harness. And fucking harness lasted for 20 seconds back then.
Yeah.
So So you just reapply the blazing and it would just give you magicka back. So if people jumped on you, you would restore your resource and destroy them. Like
it would stack the damage
it just
too.
changed everything.
Recasted it before it exploded. I seem to remember something like that where it would just roll over.
And if your harness was the first shield cast, it would never expire unless the duration went out, as long as you kept the blazing over top. And it would just give you unlimited magicka on your blazing shield. And that was like, because, well, to be honest, back then, people had to find cheese sustain. It was things like DK Battle Roar overperforming, that kind of shield stacking. That's what allowed people to actually have the sustain to do a real fight. And then as the game changed over time, that sustain was kind of introduced.
Well, in such powerhouses like like Templar and Maj DK were kind of tip of the top in terms of like buggy, tanky playstyle.
No. Anyone could do the shield stack that had a shield. So Templar and Sorcerer were the two that did it best at the time. DK was the most bugged by a long shot. Battle Roar was undoubtedly ridiculous. Like in my best way. Sorry?
Well, and Scales was infinite.
And Scales was infinite too. Scales wasn't the big issue though. The big issue with DK was Battle Roar back then. Yeah. And it just meant that like if that DK had half a brain, he's never running out of resource.
Dynamic
ever.
Ultimate was a thing, and just spam.
Not really spam, but like almost, yeah. Even in a one-on-one, you could generate ults so fast. And then Templar had a way to generate really fast too. When you use Blazing Spear on launch, it would give you like 30 or 40 ultimate if you hit one guy. And if you hit more, it would give you like 60. And I was like, okay.
I saw
a couple Blazing Spears, permanent Viz Bats, Rip Zerg.
Yeah, there was a couple Maj DK builds where their bats, they were literally spamming bats. It was.
I did that too. I remember Chillrand when you said Hova took over Chillrand. I would play there with a friend of mine. His name was Sieg, and we just go like 2v60, like just destroy Zergs. And it was just because we spent the entire fight in Viz Bats. It was so stupid. Like it was really stupid.
All right.